And good evening. Good evening. Come on in, folks. I'm Mark Wallace, your host and facilitator of the People Show, with you every Monday night on intellectualradio.com, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And we are taking your phone calls at 951-221-8221. I'll put it in the chat so that you all can call in tonight. 221-8221. And you can certainly participate in the program. All right. So look forward to you doing that. For some reason, I can't seem to get you in, but we're going to work it out. 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 There you go. I knew that we would be able to get you in there at some point. Here we go. So, all right. There are a whole bunch of stuff going on for the week. And we're going to talk about them. And I want for you to talk about them. We're also live on YouTube. So if you all, those of you who are on YouTube, we certainly welcome you onto the program, as well as to those of you who are on with us on Instagram and, of course, on Facebook, and, of course, on intellectualradio.com. All right. So, again, our number is 951-221-8221. I want to get your comments about anything that you want to talk about politically. First, I'm going to start about this. I want to start about this because I think that it is important. And I think that we're going to talk about the election. Oh, by the way, next week we're going to be talking with the assessor. We're going to talk with the assessor on next week's program. Fritz Kagi is going to be with us, and he is going to be taking your calls, going to be answering your questions, and we're going to be talking about the whole process. If you are a property owner in Cook County, we're going to talk about the process of assessing and why it's different in terms of the taxes from one municipality to the other. I can go into that tonight, but I'm not going to, because I'm going to save it for next week so that we can talk about and answer all of your questions and related to that and talk about that process. I am a big supporter of Fritz Kagi because Fritz Kagi has certainly been trying to work with the legislature to change the laws, to change the rules, so that it can be much more favorable to homeowners than it has been to commercial property owners. Commercial property owners have been raking homeowners over the coals, and there have been a couple of people who are working with them to help them to rake homeowners over the coals that are at the board of review. That is George Cardenas and Larry Rogers Jr. I know that many of you like Larry Rogers Jr. and you think that he is one of the good guys. He is not one of the good guys. I'm not saying that he is a terrible person, but he is certainly a terrible representative. So he's not one of the good guys. He does not represent the interest of the average homeowner in the city of Chicago. He takes big donations from wealthy tax appeal attorneys that represent wealthy property owners, commercial owners downtown. I'm not talking against wealthy property owners, but wealthy commercial property owners downtown get huge tax abatements, and those tax abatements, homeowners pay those tax abatements in the three districts. We have 1, 2, and 3 districts. District 2 is the district that covers the South Loop, the South Side, and all of the southern suburbs. and we get hit with more than $800 million in tax abatements given to very wealthy commercial property owners downtown, that they get these big, huge tax cuts that they don't have to pay during the time that they own the properties, and then they sell the properties for what they are actually worth, and we have been stuck with the bill. No different than you sending somebody to a steakhouse. They get a big, juicy steak with whatever trimmings that they want, and when they leave, you pay the bill. That is what's happening to the average property homeowner or property owner on the south side of Chicago. It's also happening on the first district, which is on the north side, and it's also happening in the third district. Two people on the board of review are largely responsible for that: George Cardenas and Larry Rogers Jr. And we have to replace both of them. Now, we're not going to be able to replace Larry Rogers Jr. because you've elected him for another term. But we will have the opportunity coming up in the next cycle to replace George Cardenas. And we can shift the balance on the board of review, because there is one other person on the board of review. I can't think of her name right now, but I did have her on the program. Her name escapes me. And if we can shift the power, or certainly shift what's going on the board and replace George Cardenas, so we need to find a good Latino progressive candidate that will be more representative of the people and not representative of the commercial property owners. That's what we have to do, because it is largely out in that district. So that's what we're going to be talking about next week. So look forward to that conversation, and please make sure that you join us. Now, the other thing that I want to talk about is how important it is for us to organize ourselves, right? We have to organize ourselves to make sure that, I'm sorry. What happened here? Something happened here. There we go. All right, we've got to organize ourselves to making sure that we have the kinds of political power that we need. Now, let me explain to you what I mean by that. It's going to take all of us, or certainly a big swath of us, to make this happen. And what I mean by taking a big swath of us, let's look at where we are here in the region of Chicago and Cook County and in the state of Illinois, but largely Chicago and Cook County. In Chicago, even though we have lost population, we've lost 2 black wards because we've lost population. And I'll talk about that and how that it came about over a period of time, and we're still happening because of poor representation. We'll talk about that. But what I want to talk about is what you and I can do and must do if we are going to advance our community. I'm looking for something. If we're going to advance our community, you and I, I'm looking for some information while I'm talking to you. You and I are going to have to change the way that we have been doing things. It is imperative that you and I change the way that we have been doing things. Absolutely imperative. Now, we can no longer continue to operate in silos if, in fact, we are going to advance the Black community. If we're going to advance the Black community, we are going to have to build and unify an independent Black voting bloc. And in doing so, we will transformationally impact the way that politics and governance happens in Chicago and Cook County and in the state of Illinois. And the reason why we will be able to do that is because no one who is running for a countywide, a citywide, or a statewide office can get elected without the Black vote largely supporting them. It cannot happen mathematically. That tells us that we have a significant opportunity to have a greater voice for what happens in our communities by impacting public policy, by influencing those who are our representatives. That is the democratic way. That is what democracy is. We elect people to represent the interest of the greater whole. That's not what's happening. That's not what's happening. Now, and I don't want you to get off into a tangent, but I want you to stay focused. Stay with me on this, because we must do this. If we don't do this, we will still have people individually doing and benefiting, but as a greater whole, we will not. Our communities will continue to erode. Our educational institutions, public education will continue to erode. Equity will continue to erode. So what I'm talking about is that we have to do this in order to strengthen our community. Now, individually, Black people individually have done well even in slavery. So I'm not talking about individually. When I say in slavery, I meant that you have slaves who had certain privileges that other slaves did not have. So they were doing better than other slaves, though they were still slaves. So I'm just merely pointing out individualism is a toxic cancer for any oppressed people. I told you about a conversation that I had with a Jewish rabbi about that. I don't want to get into that. But now, what I am saying to you is what you and I have to do. What you and I have to do is that we must reach the people in our family, our friends, and the people in our trusted circles across all of our ward lines where we live in Chicago. And we live in largely 20 wards that we populate, while we are dispersed in the other wards. But in 20 wards, if we could start out by building this independent block, and right now it is about building the block, getting the team together. We don't have to worry about the agenda. We don't have to worry about the playbook, because guess what? We got all of the brain thrusts to write the agenda, to write the playbook. You can have the greatest, the best playbook and the best written agenda, the most excited written agenda that you want to have. But if you don't have a team to execute, your agenda is nothing more than a well-written agenda and a well-written plan in a binder that has no strength. All right? So let's put that aside. Let's build the team from the resources that we already have. That's why we started back in 2017, 10 by 10 to win. We got sidetracked because of COVID, but we've reignited 10 by 10 to win. And all 10 by 10 to win is the tent. It's the umbrella for us to build the union of Black voters, to build our own independent voting bloc. Why are we building an independent voting bloc? So that we can determine and impact public policy, and the people who are in the legislative offices, whether it be a local municipal office like city council or a village, or whether it be the state, or whether it be the county, or whether it be our federal representatives. How do we make this work? How do we empower this? Because if we got 10,000 people in just the 20 wards where we largely live, that's just the floor. That's 10,000 times 20 is 200,000 people that we are connected in our union. And we have empowered ourselves that anybody who is running for an office, whether it be an alderman, a Cook County commissioner, anybody running for mayor, Cook County board, president, any of that, with 200,000 people on the same team, we get to, before we even go to the first election, we get to say, and say it once, as a body, whatever it is, to whomever it is in office. They then have to respond to us. And trust me, they will respond to us because they respond to votes. The 200,000 is 200,000 votes going in the same direction. 10,000 in each ward going in the same direction. 10,000 people deciding on who the alderman or alderwoman will be in that ward is serious power. And in 20 wards, it's enormous power. It determines 20 aldermen. It also determines who's going to be the mayor. Because the mayor cannot be the mayor without the Black community, without the Black vote. Mathematically impossible. Mathematically will not happen. So now we have to organize the Black vote to work in the interest of the Black community. This is not building up a club to elevate any one single person. This is building an infrastructure to advance the Black community, the interest of the Black community. And when we do that, we will elevate opportunity for many people in our communities, strengthen the infrastructure of our public school system, because we have the voice to make the demand, and those demands have to be met. And if those demands are not met, the people who are in those seats will be replaced. And because we have the power to make a demand, and we have the power to tell people who are in representative office that we have finally organized ourselves together to strengthen ourselves, to give ourselves the muscle that we need to make anybody who wants to ignore and disrespect the Black community and overlook the Black community when the Black community speaks, then we will replace them. When you have that kind of threat, you now have power. We, as a Black community in the country, here in Chicago, in the region, in the country, Black people have never, ever been organized. Never. We have come together and supported a certain group of people, but we've never been organized independently on our own to say we are going to select, we're going to elect our own representatives from our own. If we have 200,000 people in our union of voters in 10 by 10 to win, I'm sure out of 200,000 people, there are people who in the different wards that would be interested in being alderwoman or alderman. We will have the resources to be able to go out and get their signatures, get them on the ballot, and get them elected because we've got the numbers to do it. With 10,000 people in every ward, we have the numbers to do everything we do. We got the numbers to raise the money that we need to raise. Look at this. If we have 200,000 people in the independent voting block, 200,000 people giving $5 a month to our political action committee, which is, we have to report to the state. So there'll be clear cut records of it. $5 a month, 200,000 people, that's $1 million a month. Out of 200,000 people, $1 million a month, times 12, we raise $12 million a year. We have enough money to hire counsel, to hire consultants, to do printing, to run campaigns for those persons that we as the block have selected to go and run in these public offices. Now, doesn't mean that it's going to be easy, but it is certainly going to be a lot easier because we have the resources to put people on the ground, to put boots on the ground and have very strong campaigns, very strong ground games to get those persons on ballots, to get those persons elected. Right? That's just the election part. Let's say that we get the 200,000 people in the block. 200,000 people in the block will make impact before an election. You will have alderpersons, the mayor, the governor, the Cook County Board president, anybody in elective office that needs votes are now going to be respecting our communities, and they will be reaching out to our community. I'm telling you, without fail. Why? Because numbers is what every elective person looks at. In the primary election, we only had about 22% of people that turned out in the primary election. If we had our block together of 10,000 people in each one of our wards, we would have predominantly swept the primaries. And the primaries in Illinois are really our general elections. What happens in the primary determines who gets elected in the general. And so we've got to get much more involved in our primary elections. But we have to first organize ourselves so that we can impact any election and that we can impact any legislative committee, whether it be city, county, state, federal. So that's the power that a union has. Now, let me tell you, just give you an example of just how strong the opportunity is that you and I have right here in this region of Chicago and Cook County. In Chicago, even though we've lost population, I just did a FOIA several weeks ago to find out the registered people in Chicago and by demographic, by race. In Chicago, the Black registered voters in Chicago are still the largest single voting bloc of any ethnic group in Chicago, even that we've lost population. We've lost population and we've lost 2 wards. And we have another 140,000 people who are eligible to register to vote that are not registered. We have another 15,000 students who have become eligible to get registered to vote. I spoke with a young man last night in Jewel food store. His name is Jalen. And he saw my Kamala shirt. By the way, see my Kamala shirt? That's a shirt that I have produced, and I'm selling this shirt for $25 if you want to get one. And part of the proceeds we're sending to the Harris campaign. But so I had this shirt made up because I had a couple of these shirts where my wife and I had the shirt, and I went out and somebody said, "Oh, love your shirt, want the shirt." So we decided to get more printed up. I got some printed up, sold those 5 or 6 of those. And so I thought this would be a good idea of working with the campaign. I've done some phone banking with the campaign on yesterday and in North Carolina and different places and the swing states. So I'm having a great time working on the campaign. But the point is, if you want one of these shirts, $25, all you have to do is Zelle, or you can hit me up on my page, and we'll get you a Kamala shirt. It says Kamala across the top and Kamala in the phonetic spelling. Kamala, for those people who intentionally say her name wrong. So, but anyway, it's a good shirt. If you'd like to get one, let me know. You can hit me in the chat as well. So, so putting our block together, it is a union of voters. So we have more people in Chicago. And then if you look at Cook County, we have more than 1 million registered voters, Black registered voters in Chicago and Cook County proper. Now, we are in a rather uncommon and unique place as Black people in a major metropolitan city, a major metropolitan region. And as a result of that, we have to strategically use what we have available to us to maximize what it is that we are going after, to maximize our strength. So the reality is, it doesn't matter who is in the Springfield. It doesn't matter who is on the 5th floor. It doesn't matter who is the president of the board. If we put together ourselves in those kinds of numbers, we, in a large respect, own whoever is in those public offices. Why do we own them? I don't want to say own. Let me take that back. We don't want to model our oppressors' model on ourselves. So I take that back. No, what we do have is we have the strength to influence whoever is in a public office. We have the strength to put somebody in. We have the strength to take them out. That's enormous power. That's enormous power. We don't have that power now because we are not organized. In any way, shape, or form, we are not organized. And it's not organized that we come together and say that we're going to support Harris, or we're going to support Brandon, or we're going to support Pretwinkle. That's not organized. Organized is that we organize ourselves together and we determine who it is we're going to select to elect. And when we organize ourselves, we put ourselves in a position of power that they have to come to us and they have to ask us, what is it that we want for them to do? That's when you know that you have power. So we have access to power, but we're not operating in power. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is this program that I do, that with all of the lighting and the connections, the internet, none of it can happen if I don't plug it all in to the power, to be empowered. And that is what we are doing. We have access, immediate access to power, but we have not plugged into the power. And plugging into the power is agreeing to bring ourselves together unified. And so 10 by 10 to win is what that methodology is. It's not a 10 by 10 to win for somebody to have a club. It's not a 10 by 10 to win for me to have individual power. It is a methodology that we, not me, that we have power to change the conditions for our communities. That is what we must do if we really want for things to change in our communities and for our people. This is not talking about disenfranchising anybody else. This is not talking about being anti to anyone's race, anyone's gender, nothing. This is about being pro the interest of the Black community, pro the health and welfare of the Black community. The only way that we're going to advance in measurable ways is that we've got to organize. And individualism is the toxic cancer that has been eroding and eating at us very slowly but methodically for a long period of time. Stokely Carmichael said that no person in this country makes any advancement solely based on his or her talent or worth. All individual advancement is based on mass struggle. We make no progress in this world without shedding our blood. Therefore, brothers and sisters, your advancement does not belong to you or your success. It belongs to the people And if you do not use your success or advancement for the people of, for the benefit of your people, it is a betrayal of the people who shed their blood for you. That's a quote from Stokely Carmichael, who later became Kwame Ture, who says that we are inextricably tied together and interdependent upon each other. Our success is interdependent upon us connecting ourselves together. It is not going to happen by any one individual wanting to be a star in the ghetto. You wanting to go on over and just start your own whatever so that you can say that I am the chairman of this or that or the other for a title, that is not going to work for us. And we're not asking for anybody. We're not asking for anybody to hold on one second. I want you all to, all right. We're not looking for anybody in your organizations. See, that's what's a part of our problems. I wish I could show that graphic. I don't have it, but I'm going to put it up. But if you see my hand, right? You see my hand, this finger tip, this one, this one, this one. You see how they're spread apart? See how they're spread apart? Even though they're connected to my hand. But this is how we are up here, not down here. This is how we are up here, right here. This is how we are with our organizations and our groups. We are so far apart, we're disconnected. If we come together like this, bring our organizations, the work that you're doing in your organization, continue to do the work. If you're on education, if you're on public roads, if you're on public policy, if you're on healthcare, if you're on housing, by us bringing ourselves together as a voting bloc, the organizations continue to do the work. And we ask those organizations who are in education, and those organizations who are in housing, and those organizations in healthcare, and those organizations in business and economics, continue to do that work. And you lead us in that work. And we are behind you, supporting you with the thrust of the entire block to advance those areas for our people. Cross mobilization, cross organizing ourselves together is what it is that you and I must do if we are going to survive. We are not going to survive if we continue, and certainly we're not going to thrive, not cooperatively. Individually, many of us individually will thrive, but individualism and our thriving individually, we can't rest our laurels in that. We have to get rid of the I've got mine, you go get yours mentality. We have to abandon this ideology. And we must and have to develop a cooperative system of collaborating and working together. If we are going to move and advance ourselves together, and I'm taking my time with this because it is the answer. It is the only answer for Black people to advance our communities and elevate our communities to where we know that every one of our communities should be, so that we don't have a poor community. We have great public education in all of our communities. That means that we have to come together. It certainly means that we have to put together an infrastructure in order for us to do that. And the infrastructure is building that independent block so that we can impact, forcefully impact. And I can make that guarantee. I can make that guarantee that we can do it. So what I'm asking for all of us to do, wherever you are, whether you're on the west side, if you're on the south side, it is an enormous thing that we can do. And I know that some people may say, wow, how in the world we're going to do this? And we got every other kind of reason why it's not going to happen. But that's not true. If you and I commit to talking to everyone in our trusted circle and just say to them, look, if you believe or if you trust me, let's just do this. Let's be a part of building this block. Let's commit ourselves to doing it. And then let's go and let's get 10 of our other friends and people who trust us to come aboard and get them to go get 10 other people to do it. Now, if we use that methodology, watch this. So if 10 people went out and talked to 10 of their friends and said, look, we're going to participate in this Zoom meeting. They have this Zoom meeting. We're talking about building Black power. So we're going to participate in this Zoom meeting and only last an hour and a half. Come participate in this meeting with us. If 10 people did that, guess what happens? That means we have 100 people. And if those 10 went out, we have 1,000 people. 2 times over, we got 1,000 people if we all committed to doing it. And if the 2,000 goes out and gets 10, that is 10,000. Is that right? I'm sorry. If the 1,000 goes out and get 10, that's 10,000. 3 times over. Then if the 10,000 goes out and touches their 10 friends, 4 times over, we are at 100,000 people. And if the 100,000 goes out and touches 10, we're at 1 million. All it takes is duplicating it, replicating it 5 times. But we got to be committed to do it. All of us have to be on the same page. Now, let me talk about this because I know how people, well, who's going to be in charge? This, that, or the other. What I'm asking you to do is let's build a team. Let's build a team, and then we can internally decide on the structure of the representative leadership. That's all I'm saying to us. Let's build the team. I'm spending time on this because it is so vitally critical that we get it. And those of you who are watching, who are on, you can call me at 951-221-8221. If you've got any questions, you have any comments, let's talk about it. I am prepared to answer any question that anybody has about this methodology and about this effort. I'm going to give you an example. I just told you how many people we have here just in Chicago and Cook County. I'm going to give you an example of how that becomes real power and how that can be. So now, I talk off and on, or from time to time, about how many people are in the United Auto Workers. How many members? You're familiar with the United Auto Workers. I'm going to tell you. There are 400,000 active members currently in the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico. 400,000 in the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico. There are 580,000 retired members of the United Auto Workers. So 400,000 active, 580,000 retired, combined is 980,000 people, right? In the entire United States of America, and Puerto Rico and Canada. And the United Auto Workers, back in March, decided to go on strike because the auto manufacturers reneged on their promise. And the promise was that the workers would forego raises, increases back 10 years ago under the condition that they would get their raises once the companies had become healthy again. So they loaned them their raises and increase. So the auto manufacturers are doing tremendously good. Their record profits, multi-million-dollar bonuses given to executives, $30 million to one. And the manufacturers told them, no, we can't do it, we can't afford it. Well, the United Auto Workers said, if you're not going to live up to your agreement, then we're going to be forced to strike. And so what the United Auto Workers did was they voted to strike. So they started a strike, but they started it on a small scale across a couple of the manufacturers. The manufacturers held strong, saying that they couldn't do this or they couldn't do that. They expanded it. Keep in mind, 400,000 in the United States, Puerto Rico, and Canada. So that means that all 400,000 are not here in the United States. What the United Auto Workers did, they didn't make a phone call. They didn't ask. But President Joseph Biden went to stand on the picket line of the United Auto Workers because he knew that they represented a swath of people and that the United Auto Workers would influence a lot of people to vote one way or the other. And so Joseph Biden got on Air Force One and went to Michigan and stood on the picket line with the United Auto Workers. That has never happened in the history of this country, that a sitting president stood on a picket line. He wasn't asked to come. He wasn't invited. He was compelled to come and stand with those workers. 400,000 people in the United States that are active, Puerto Rico and Canada, 400,000. 580,000 retired. That's the United States of America. Now watch this. We are 600,000 plus in the city of Chicago. 600,000 registered Black voters in the city of Chicago to date. On this date, September the 23rd, 2024, registered to vote. In Cook County, we are greater than 1 million Black registered voters. The fact that we have not organized ourselves to wield our own and determine our own future. Now, if you go to the website 10by10towin.org, 10by10towin.org, you will see the mission. What is the mission? The mission is to finally organize and unite a Black independent voting bloc throughout the city of Chicago, the county of Cook, the state of Illinois, in order to select, slate, and elect representatives locally, statewide, and federally from our own to self-determine and meet the needs and demands of all our communities. That is the mission, is to build a team, to have the strength. If we build the team, guess what? We have the capacity, we have the brain thrust, because building the team, obviously, we are going to have people who have the skill sets and the intelligence and the talents, whatever it is that we need. If we just start out with 200,000 people, we're going to have everything that we need, every area of support that we need represented. So at this point, we don't really have to talk about money, right? At this point, we don't need to talk about money. At this point, all we need to talk about is I don't know where that came from. So, but at this point, we have to talk about we need to talk about building the team. I got a little distracted. I'm sorry. Building the team. So getting us together. So I want to ask you, I just want to ask you, if in fact you would go to the website, 10by10towin.org. It's 10x10towin.org. 10x10towin.org is a website. All right. And then I'm going to put in the chat the text alert. You can get into the text alert because I send out a text alert every Thursday for the Zoom meeting that we have. And all we're doing is building right now. All we're doing is building. We're not getting into the weeds of any issues or anything like that. We're just building at this point, right? So, so if we build, I want to put this in the chat so you can see it in the chat. So when we build, and as we build, we energize each other. We encourage each other. And the more that we see the numbers growing, the more that we get excited about it, and the more and the easier it gets to be for us to see how this power works. Because as we are building, you will see there's going to be a shift the way that the President of the United States showed up to the people, to the picket line for the United Auto Workers, guess who's going to show up for the black community? The governor, the mayor, the alderpersons, the state reps, the state senators. And if they don't, they send us a message that that's fine. Because anybody who wants to ignore us and think that they can ignore 200,000 people, 200,000 people together, not 200,000 people that are disconnected. 200,000 people together who have agreed that we're going to come together and we're going to unite and we're going to go in the same direction. We're going to have our own internal decisions. And when we come out, we're going to come out united and we're going in that direction. Anybody who ignores that, okay, they just pay the price. We're going to select other people to go in those various positions. That's wielding real power. That's organizing real power in order to advance the interests of our communities. We don't have to worry about having all of the ducks lined up. We don't have to worry about having everything tied in a nice, neat little bow. We will put all those things together. What we have to do is to agree to work together, to agree to come together and to work together. That's what we must do, is to first agree that we are going to work together. Then we can do everything else that we need, because we'll have all the talent. We'll have all the resources. The resources is you and I. That's the resource. So if we need some writers, if we need policy people, candidates, people in education, economics, health, social services, justice, all of those areas of important to us. All of those areas of importance to us, we can cover. All right. I'm probably going to come back to it, but I want to ask you to please just you show up, get 10 or as many of the people who trust you to show up with you. So that means you need to get them to text 10x10 to the number 855-909-1385. I did that wrong. Let me do this. Text 10x10 to 855-909-1385. There you go. Text 10x10 to the number 855-909-1385. Text 10x10 to the number 855-909-1385. So I ask you to please get into the text alert. All right, I'm going to shift over a little bit. So I've spent the first hour really talking about that, and I'm going to continue to talk about it because I think that it is important. In fact, I know that it is important, but I also know that it is the resolution and the solution to liberating ourselves and liberating our communities and advancing our communities so that our communities thrive, not just survive, but to thrive. Like every other community, our communities will thrive because they now have to invest in our communities. They now have to pay attention to our communities. Our communities can no longer be ignored. Now, all right, so let me get into this whole thing about this guy. I want to get your thoughts on this, and I've refrained from talking about it, but what's happening with the Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina, Mark Robinson? What is going on with him? Mark Robinson, the Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina, in hot water. What's the deal with this guy? This is a man who, now, CNN came out with a shocking report about some things that he has been involved in. And a report came out recently. Those of you who are on Instagram, please go over to YouTube. We're only on Instagram for an hour, so I ask you to go over to YouTube or to join us on Facebook. We look forward to seeing you. All right. All right. So, so Mark Robinson, who is a Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina, who they have these allegations. So he is 56 years old, from Greensboro, North Carolina. He's married to Yolanda Hill. He's with the Republican Party. Education, went to North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University. And he became a candidate for governor for the 2024 gubernatorial election in North Carolina. And so Mark Robinson, who had some posts that CNN did some reporting on, where he called himself, he said that I am a black Nazi. According to this report, the North Carolina GOP nominee for governor made dozens of disturbing comments on porn forums. Mark Robinson, the controversial and socially conservative Republican nominee for governor of North Carolina, made a series of inflammatory comments on a pornographic website's message board more than a decade ago, in which he referred to himself as a, quote, black Nazi, and expressed support for reinstating slavery. A CNN K-File investigation found, despite a recent history of anti-transgender rhetoric, Robinson said he enjoyed watching transgender pornography. A review of archived messages found in which he also referred to himself as a perv. The comments, which Robinson denies making, predates his entry into politics and current stint as North Carolina's lieutenant governor. They were made under the username that CNN was unable to identify as Robinson's by matching a litany of biographical details and a shared email address between the two. Many of Robinson's comments were gratuitously sexual and lewd in nature. They were made between 2008 and 2012 on, quote, Nude Africa, a pornographic website that includes a message board. The comments were made under the username Mini Soul R, whatever that is, Mini Soldier, a moniker Robinson used and frequently used online. Robinson listed his full name on his profile for Nude Africa, as well as an email address he used on numerous websites across the internet for decades. CNN is reporting only a small portion of Robinson's comments on the website, given their graphic nature. Many of Robinson's comments on Nude Africa stand in contrast to his public stances on issues such as abortion and transgender rights. Publicly, Robinson has fiercely argued that the people should use bathrooms only that they correspond to their gender they were assigned at birth. He's also said transgender women should be arrested for using women's restrooms. If you're a man on Friday night and all of a sudden on Saturday you feel like a woman and you want to go into the women's bathroom in the mall, you will be arrested. On whatever we got to do, we have to do, Robinson said at a campaign rally in February 2024. We're going to protect our women, yet privately under the username Mini Soldier on Nude Africa. Robinson graphically describes his own sexual arousals as an adult from the memory of secretly peeping on women in public gyms, showers as a 14-year-old. Robinson recounted the story as a memory he said he still fantasizes about. Quote, I came to a spot that was a dead end, but had two big vent covers over it. It just so happened it overlooked the showers. I sat there for about an hour and watched as several girls came in the shower, unquote. Robinson wrote on Nude Africa. CNN is not publishing the graphic sexual details of Robinson's story. Quote, I went peeping again the next morning, Robinson wrote, but after that, I went back. The ladder was locked. So those two times were the only two times I got to do memories. So Mark Robinson, candidate for lieutenant governor. Now, this report came out by CNN. Now, Mark Robinson vehemently denies it and says that they're bringing up some 18 to 20-year-old salacious lies. What does that mean? 18 to 20-year-old salacious lies. Was somebody lying about him 20 years ago? Was anybody even talking about him 20 years ago? So that sounds like an acknowledgement that something happened if it were 20 years ago. Nobody even knew who he was 20 years ago. This guy came out of nowhere and threw his hat in the ring and somehow got people of North Carolina to vote for him and to send him to Congress. Send him to the lieutenant governor's position. Mark Robinson is a black man. And if these allegations are true, which there seem to be pretty solid reporting, if they're not true, then why isn't Mark Robinson suing CNN if they're not true? Because if somebody was to put out some false information on you and you knew it not to be true, if a news outlet in particular put information out that would defame your character, you would have a cause to go and petition the court. In particular, you are a person who is in elected office and you're running for governor, and you're saying that somebody has put some information out or some misinformation or some disinformation that you say is not true. And if it is not true, why aren't you retaining your counsel, your attorneys to file suit against CNN? Why is that? I want to read a little bit further here. In other comments on Nude Africa, Robinson discussed his affinity for transgender pornography. I like watching tranny on girl porn. That's the F word, hot. It takes the man out while leaving the man in, Robinson wrote. And yeah, I'm a perv too. In an interview with CNN on Thursday, Robinson repeatedly denied that he made the comments on Nude Africa. This is not, quote, this is not true. This is not us. These are not our words. Who's our? And this is not anything that is characteristic of me, Robinson said. Presented with the litany of evidence connecting him to the many soldier username on Nude Africa, Robinson said, I'm not going to get into the minutia of how somebody manufactured this. These salacious tabloid lies. CNN first reached out to Robinson on Tuesday morning with evidence connecting him to the comments on Nude Africa. It took his campaign 2 days to respond and issue a denial. During his interview with CNN, Robinson repeatedly said that the issues that faced North Carolinians were more important than what he called tabloid trash. Hold on. Robinson's current position, his office has said, is support for so-called heartbeat legislation, which could ban abortions after a heartbeat is detected, but with exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother. If victorious in this year's election, Robinson would be the first Black governor in the state's history. So that's going to be rather interesting. So with that said, again, if a major news outlet has put some information out that's inaccurate and made these kinds of suggestions to you about you, the first thing that I'd be thinking about is contacting my lawyers. And the first things that I would do is contact my lawyers and tell my lawyers, hey, this is completely unfounded. CNN has completely fabricated this or reporting information that is not true. Is not true. Did not happen. And they put it out there. I want to file a lawsuit against them for defamation. And they're going to either have to come up with the proof that that is accurate, which he has not challenged. He has not challenged CNN. So I guess the question becomes, do you believe that Mark Robinson should step down as candidate for governor of the state of North Carolina? based on these allegations as well as some others. Just a question that I put out there. 951-221-8221 is the number. 951-221-8221. We'll take your phone calls, get your comments. Lines are open right now. So, I mean, the kinds of things that is happening on the other side, and I am not referring to the other side as true Republicans, because true, sincere Republicans would not be engaging. They just would not be engaging in this type of rhetoric. And as a matter of fact, it's been reported that you're talking about people who are serving as interns and people who are just getting their start interning for Mark Robinson have quit. They don't make a lot of money. They're just trying to get their feet wet, trying to get into journalism, but they have walked away. They have quit. If these allegations have no basis in truth, I would think that Mark Robinson would be suing CNN and clearing his name. I would think that he would be doing that. Because if they are salacious lies, why did he put a date on it? Or not necessarily a date, but certainly a year. He claimed that these salacious lies are 18 to 20 years old. That's what he said. So did somebody suggest that he was doing this 18 to 20 years ago? So who knew Mark Robinson when he was 36 years old? When he's in his 30s? Because that's what he's saying. He's 56 years old today. If it was 20 years ago, 20 from 56 is 36. So who knew him? Even if he was 38, who knew Mark Robinson? Nobody did. So apparently he got elected. He was able to find a thread of weakness and got elected. But now he's on full display of who he really is. Now the people will make their decision in North Carolina. I understand that it seems like he is losing a lot of ground in North Carolina. But we'll see how that plays out. But isn't it amazing? Isn't it amazing? It's amazing. It's shocking. It's upsetting. It is crazy where we are today in this country because of one insecure, incompetent, ill-prepared individual. See how toxic individualism is? And the entire Republican Party, decided to hedge their bets on Donald Trump, or their party on Donald Trump, on somebody who is clearly not a person of character, not of a person of any moral integrity. And refuse to try and revive their party. Now, there are Republicans, people who are Republicans, people who I know that are reasonable Republicans, though we may not agree on political ideology or political approach, but they do believe in the fundamentals of our democracy, that we can have a common discourse about certain issues and debates and deliberate and come up with ideas and solutions. This group that belongs to the Trump group, the former president, this group has no interest whatsoever. And they have commandeered the Republican Party. And the Republican Party seems to not know how to take it back. They just don't seem to understand how it is that they can get it back. You know, Clarence Carter sang a song called Snatching It Back. And I'm reminded of that song. But I think the Republicans need to snatch it back. They need to snatch it back. They need to figure out how to snatch their party back from someone who has just created all kinds of problems for the country, for that matter, and certainly for the Republicans as a whole. I mean, some of them have just completely compromised themselves, all for the sake of them being dug in to their party, not being dug into the Constitution, not being dug into democracy, but really their party. Because if you were if you were sincere about democracy, there's no way that you would be even equivocating about who it is that you're going to support in this election. There would be no possible way that you would be compromising yourself if in fact you cared about our democratic norms, if you cared about the values under our democracy of trying to make a more perfect union. Well, you can't do that if you don't have a basis for which to work from. So, but there are Republicans that have come out to support Kamala Harris, not because they believe in Kamala Harris's political philosophy, but because they know that Vice President Kamala Harris is the best of the two choices for me. It's more than just the best of two choices. One of the, I guess you can call starches rechoice, it will be the first time that Judge Ludick, a veteran of two Republican administrations, has voted and will vote for a Democrat. He says, quote, in the presidential election of 2024, there is only one political party and one candidate for the presidency that can claim the mantle of defender and protector of America's democracy, the Constitution, and the rule of law, Ludick wrote in a statement obtained. As a result, I will unhesitatingly vote for the Democratic Party's candidate for the presidency of the United States, Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris. Now, he's not abandoning any of his ideology. What he is saying is that I want to make sure that I have a constitution in place so that I can debate, deliberate, and support my ideology. Now, a retired federal appeals court judge, Michael Ludick, a prominent conservative legal scholar put on the bench by President George H.W. Bush, is endorsing Vice President Kamala Harris over the former President Trump, whose candidacy he describes as an existential threat to American democracy. That's what a retired federal appeals court judge and scholar, Michael Ludick, how he has characterized Donald Trump. He goes on to say, because of the former president's continued knowingly false claims that he won the 2020 election, millions of Americans no longer have faith and confidence in our national elections, and many never will again. Many Americans, especially young Americans, typically have even begun to question whether or not constitutional democracy is the best form of self-government. That is retired federal appeals court judge Michael Ludick. And I have so much more that I can. Do you all remember, any of you remember, there was a woman by the name of Barbara Jordan? You all may remember Barbara Jordan. Barbara Jordan was someone who gave Congress, she was a freshman congresswoman at the time. And Barbara Jordan gave Congress a lesson. And she was a junior congresswoman. And they were in session considering impeachment after Watergate for the president of the United States at the time, Richard Nixon. Take a look and take a listen at Barbara Jordan, who gave them quite a lesson.
If the impeachment provision in the Constitution of the United States will not reach the offenses charged here, then perhaps that 18th century Constitution should be abandoned to a 20th century paper shredder.
That was Barbara Jordan, who spoke at 1:15 in the morning during the Nixon Watergate hearings. I'll play a little bit more of her her speech. And if you have never heard Congresswoman Barbara Jordan had given the committee a constitutional masterclass back in 1972.
I recognize the gentlelady from Texas, Ms. Jordan, for the purpose of general debate, not to exceed a period of 15 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Jordan.
Mr. Chairman, I join my colleague, Mr. Rangel, in thanking you for giving the junior members of this committee the glorious opportunity of sharing the pain of this inquiry. Mr. Chairman, you are a strong man, and it has not been easy, but we have tried as best we can to give you as much assistance as possible. Earlier today, we heard the beginning of the preamble to the Constitution of the United States. We the people. It's a very eloquent beginning. But when that document was completed on the 17th of September in 1787, I was not included in that we the people. I felt somehow for many years that George Washington and Alexander Hamilton just left me out by mistake. But through the process of amendment, interpretation, and court decision, I have finally been included in we the people. Today I am an inquisitor, and hyperbole would not be fictional and would not overstate the solemnness that I feel right now. My faith in the Constitution is whole, it is complete, it is total. And I am not going to sit here and be an idle spectator to the diminution, the subversion, the destruction of the Constitution. Who can so properly be the inquisitors for the nation as the representatives of the nation themselves? The subjects of its jurisdiction are those offenses which proceed from the misconduct of public men. And that's what we're talking about. In other words, from the abuse or violation of some public trust. It is wrong, I suggest, it is a misreading of the Constitution for any member here to assert that for a member to vote for an article of impeachment means that that member must be convinced that the president should be removed from office. The Constitution doesn't say that. The powers relating to impeachment are an essential check in the hands of the body, the legislature, against and upon the encroachments of the executive. The division between the two branches of the legislature, the House and the Senate, assigning to the one the right to accuse and to the other the right to judge. The framers of this Constitution were very astute. They did not make the accusers and the judges the same person. We know the nature of impeachment. We've been talking about it a while now. It is chiefly designed for the president and his high ministers to somehow be called into account. It is designed to bridle the executive if he engages in excesses. It is designed as a method of national inquest into the conduct of public men. The framers confided in the Congress the power, if need be, to remove the president in order to strike a delicate balance between a president swollen with power and grown tyrannical and preservation of the independence of the executive. The nature of impeachment, a narrowly channeled exception to the separation of powers maxim. The Federal Convention of 1787 said that. It limited impeachment to high crimes and misdemeanors and discounted and opposed the term maladministration. It is to be used only for great misdemeanors, so it was said in the North Carolina Ratification Convention. And in the Virginia Ratification Convention, we do not trust our liberty to a particular branch. We need one branch to check the other. No one need be afraid. The North Carolina Ratification Convention, no one need be afraid that officers who commit oppression will pass with immunity. Prosecutions of impeachments will seldom fail to agitate the passions of the whole community, said Hamilton in the Federalist Papers, number 65. We divide into parties, more or less friendly or inimical to the accused. I do not mean political parties in that sense. The drawing of political lines goes to the motivation behind impeachment. But impeachment must proceed within the confines of the constitutional term high crime and misdemeanors. Of the impeachment process, it was Woodrow Wilson who said that nothing short of the grossest offenses against the plain law of the land will suffice to give them speed and effectiveness. Indignation so great as to overgrow party interest may secure a conviction, but nothing else can. Common sense would be revolted if we engaged upon this process for petty reasons. Congress has a lot to do. Appropriations, tax reform, health insurance, campaign finance reform, housing, environmental protection, energy sufficiency, mass transportation. Pettiness cannot be allowed to stand in the face of such overwhelming problems. So today we're not being petty. We're trying to be big, because the task we have before us is a big one. This morning, in a discussion of the evidence, we are told that the evidence which purports to support the allegations of misuse of the CIA by the president is thin. We're told that that evidence is insufficient. What that recital of the evidence this morning did not include is what the president did know on June the 23rd, 1972. The president did know that it was Republican money, that it was money from the Committee for the Re-election of the President, which was found in the possession of one of the burglars arrested on June the 17th. What the president did know on the 23rd of June was the prior activities of E. Howard Hunt, which included his participation in the break-in of Daniel Ellsberg, psychiatrist, which included Howard Hunt's participation in the Dita Beard ITT affair, which included Howard Hunt's fabrication of cables designed to discredit the Kennedy administration. We were further cautioned today that perhaps these proceedings ought to be delayed because certainly there would be new evidence forthcoming from the President of the United States. There has not even been an obfuscated indication that this committee would receive any additional materials from the president. The committee subpoena is outstanding, and if the president wants to supply that material, the committee sits here. The fact is that on yesterday, the American people waited with great anxiety for 8 hours, not knowing whether their president would obey an order of the Supreme Court of the United States. At this point, I would like to juxtapose a few of the impeachment criteria with some of the actions the president has engaged in. Impeachment criteria. James Madison, from the Virginia Ratification Convention. If the president be connected in any suspicious manner with any person and there be grounds to believe that he will shelter him, he may be impeached. We have heard time and time again that the evidence reflects the payment to defendants, money. The president had knowledge that these funds were being paid, and these were funds collected for the 1972 presidential campaign. We know that the president met with Mr. Henry Peterson 27 times to discuss matters related to Watergate, and immediately thereafter met with the very persons who were implicated in the information Mr. Peterson was receiving. The words are, if the president is connected in any suspicious manner with any person and there be grounds to believe that he will shelter that person, he may be impeached. Just a story. Impeachment is intended for occasional and extraordinary cases where a superior power acting for the whole people is put into operation to protect their rights and rescue their liberties from violations. We know about the Houston plan. We know about the break-in of the psychiatrist's office. We know that there was absolute, complete direction on September 3rd when the president indicated that a surreptitious entry had been made in Dr. Fielding's office after having met with Mr. Ehrlichman and Mr. Young. Protect their rights, rescue their liberties from violation. The Carolina Ratification Convention impeachment criteria: those are impeachable who behave amiss or betray their public trust. Beginning shortly after the Watergate break-in and continuing to the present time, the president has engaged in a series of public statements and actions designed to thwart the lawful investigation by government prosecutors. Moreover, the president has made public announcements and assertions bearing on the Watergate case, which the evidence will show he knew to be false. These assertions, false assertions, impeachable, those who misbehave, those who behave amiss or betray the public trust. James Madison again at the Constitutional Convention: a president is impeachable if he attempts to subvert the Constitution. The Constitution charges the president with the task of taking care that the laws be faithfully executed. And yet, the president has counseled his aides to commit perjury, willfully disregard the secrecy of grand jury proceedings, conceal surreptitious entry, attempt to compromise a federal judge, while publicly displaying his cooperation with the processes of criminal justice. A president is impeachable if he attempts to subvert the Constitution. If the impeachment provision in the Constitution of the United States will not reach the offenses charged here, then perhaps that 18th century Constitution should be abandoned to a 20th century paper shredder. Has the president committed offenses and planned and directed and acquiesced in a course of conduct which the Constitution will not tolerate? That's the question. We know that. We know the question. We should now forthwith proceed to answer the question. It is reason and not passion which must guide.
That was Congresswoman Barbara Jordan, who was born in 1936, died in 1996. She served in Congress from 1973 to, I believe it was 1979. And that was her comments for the committee on whether or not to bring impeachment to for Richard Nixon for the Watergate scandal. It was not for the burglary, but for the cover-up. And isn't it so apropos that we're talking about that today? Because there has been a reporting that has come out, I heard, and in depth, about how people like Lev Parnas, who ended up going to prison, but later came out, and because of what they were trying to do with Ukraine and trying to get President Zelensky there to open up an investigation on the Bidens at the behest of the then former President Donald Trump and many others. And boy, if Barbara Jordan was here today, Barbara Jordan, one of those dynamic, brilliant Black women that we don't hear a lot about, we don't talk a lot about, but I really look at people who have, that I've been able to do a little research about and learn about. But when Barbara Jordan was speaking um, before the committee, I was in, I believe I was in junior high school at the time, and my father, uh, who really didn't have a whole lot of involvement, encouraged me to watch the Watergate hearings. And Barbara Jordan was one of those that um, she spoke at 1 o'clock. I believe it was like 1 o'clock at night. And it was one of the few times that television, that they allowed for television to stay on around the cycle, because back then television would go off the air at a certain time. Some would go off at 11 o'clock, some would go off at 12, some stations. But yes, we did not always have television 24 hours around the clock. So I'm sure some of you are probably scratching your head at that. Couldn't even think about that. But yes, there was a time that television signals went down. And of course, you had to wait to the following day or morning, whenever it was, for televisions to come back. But Barbara Jordan, one of those voices that I believe to be a significant voice that does not get a lot of, we don't hear a lot about. People like Congresswoman Barbara Jordan, people like Fannie Lou Hamer. These were significant people. I know that we recently started hearing more about Shirley Chisholm because of the movie that recently came out, and so I believe on Netflix it is. Regina King played Shirley Chisholm, and who was also, a very significant Black woman, and paved the way for many others to have the opportunity that they have today. So I certainly respect those people's contributions, and as a result of those, the reminder of those people's constitution, the people and the work that they did, reminds me of the work that we must do. Certainly the work that I must do, to continue to bring content, to continue to bring information, to continue to educate myself so that I can inform our public about the times that we're in and the importance of making sure that we understand information so that we're making good, informed choices and decisions. And these are the kind of women, and we now have, another significant Black woman, Kamala Harris, who is Vice President of the United States and who is running for the presidency of the United States. She is the Democratic nominee, and she is running for the presidency of the United States. And I am in full support of her campaign. As a matter of fact, we're going to be, I have to talk with her about it, but we talked earlier today. There may be a vice presidential debate watch party back at the same place that we had the presidential debate watch party. And that was at 2210 South Michigan. I'm going to be talking with Del Marie about that to see if she's going to still have that from Ida's Legacy. And so that would be a vice presidential debate. I'm looking forward to that debate between vice presidential nominee and governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz against the first-time United States Senator from Ohio, J.D. Vance. Looking forward to that face-off that's going to take place on ABC next. I believe it's ABC next or CBS, one or two. I'll look it up so I make sure I give you the right information of who's going to be hosting the vice presidential debate between J.D. Vance and Tim Walz on so I believe, let's see, the debate will be, the vice presidential debate will be hosted by CBS News October the 1st between Vance and Wallace. So CBS is going to be hosting that. Now, one of the other things I want to talk to you about is, when have you ever heard anybody from the Democratic Party ever suggesting that they didn't want for everybody to vote? When have you ever heard of that? Do you all know who Paul Waywich? You ever heard of Paul Waywich? Paul Waywich was the founder of the conservative movement for the Republicans. He was also the chair of Ronald Reagan's presidential campaign. These are his words. These are his words and what he says about whether everybody should be able to vote. Take a listen. Take a look.
Now, many of our Christians have what I call the goo-goo syndrome. Good government. They want everybody to vote. I don't want everybody to vote. Elections are not won by a majority of people. They never have been from the beginning of our country, and they are not now. As a matter of fact, our leverage in the elections, quite candidly, goes up as the voting populace goes down.
All right. There you go. Founder of the conservative movement and the co-founder of the Heritage Foundation, which the Heritage Foundation is one of the significant co-sponsors of Project 2025. Project 2025 is a 922-page manifesto that is really made up. It is a huge playbook for them to completely unravel and to completely disassemble and blow up our fundamental norms of democracy. Of all of the work that people have died and bled for to get us to the point of where we are, we have a long ways to go. We have a lot of work to do and a lot of things to improve. But we've made some progress, and we cannot allow for that document, which, by the way, in some states, some portions of that document is going into effect. There are some states, I believe it's 6 or 7 states, where women today have fewer rights than their parents did, than some of their grandparents did. You heard about the report that ProPublica did and provided, that there have been 2 black women died because they could not get the reproductive care that they needed to save their lives because of the state's abortion ban, and the doctors literally watch these two women, perfectly healthy women, but because of a pregnancy that was unviable, not viable, and a threat to her life, right? So because of the language of the law, the doctors did not provide the medical intervention that she needed. Because you have men who are interfering with the medical health care between another woman and her doctor. The fact is that abortion is health care. Abortion is reproductive care for women. And I say to anybody, I am a Bible thumping person, follower, pursuer of Christ. And for people to misrepresent scripture for their political ideology, and for people to be so ignorant as it relates to abortion and the scripture, I'm not here to teach you, but what I am here to say is that it is none of anybody's business, and we should not be trying to legislate morality, because if we were trying to legislate morality, some of the people in the legislature should not be in the legislature. If we're going to legislate morality, we have to have a serious conversation about some of the people who are in the legislature. And I don't have time to go into that, but if we want to so-called legislate morality, and this is, first of all, abortion is not a moral, it's not a moral choice. It is a health choice. Now, you may make it a morality choice, but that's your position. You can't impugn your position on everybody else or on somebody else and their life. You have no business trying to legislate the care and the medical care that a woman should have access to, because you don't believe in abortion. You don't have to believe in it. And if you don't believe in it, guess what? Don't have one. But stay out of the medical decisions of people between their doctor and them. I certainly wouldn't want to have anybody interfering with any medical decisions that I had to make between me and my doctor, or certainly my wife and her doctor, or any other person and their doctor. It is none of your business. None. All right, listen, that's going to do it for us tonight. I certainly want to thank you all for stopping by and tuning in to the program. And I certainly look forward to seeing you all right back here next week at the same time, same place, right here on intellectualradio.com, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Next week, don't forget, we're going to be talking with none other than our good friend, Fritz Kagi. who is the Cook County Assessor. Thank you all for tuning in to the program. We'll see you next week. Thank you so much. Good night.